Hello my viewers, welcome to more Pokemon Showdown. Due to the erasure of many replays, I have to skip all the way to week 3 of season 15 of the Mushi League. If you want to know what happened and how I did in the previous 2 sets of season 14 that I never got to cover, look at the community post. You'll find all the details. Anyways, this time I'm facing Jovel and I have 3 more games in this set to go over with you all, and you'll notice that my name on Showdown is now Shiny Loudred. And as usual, I'm going to be running TSS teams, which are basically teams centered around Spikes, Toxic, and Sandstorm. For the first game, I run a variant of this with Offensive Starmie. I also played during this season's week 1, but I lost the set partially due to really bad RNG in all 3 games. But I also got outplayed in one of the games by a well-timed Celebi reveal that happened to counter my battered team with the right coverage. As always, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and I hope you enjoy the video. Let's start this show! So in the first game, we have a Tyranitar mirror, and usually in this case both Tyranitars would be hard pressed to switch out due to like Earthquake or a fighting move. Jovel elects to switch in Skarmory and I like to switch in Swampert. At the time, I just thought pivoting in Swampert was a no-brainer, but in retrospect after looking back at the replay, switching into Skarmory would allow me to keep momentum and not sustain serious damage worst case scenario. Because you're going to see that I'll have to switch but I'll have to switch into Starmie to react to Skarmory getting a free turn to set up Spikes. Early in the game, Jovel has the upper hand in the Spikes metagame, so what I need to do right away is Rapid Spin. However, I can't do that yet because a Ghost type could switch in to block my Rapid Spin. So I opted to hit the Skarmory with Thunderbolt, and if Gengar switched in, it would not switch in unscathed. You'll see later on that this hit actually didn't really matter because Skarmory gets to heal gradually. My Skarmory now takes Starmie's place, and this would be my opportunity to set up Spikes to be even. But Jovel's Skarmory has Taunt, so now I can't do anything. If you thought I was already in a bad spot, think again. This is now Jovel's game to win. Next turn, I chose to send in Gengar so that I can threaten the Skarmory 1 turn later with Taunt or Will-O-Wisp, and worst case scenario, I don't take extra Spikes chip if Skarmory roars on the switch. But as fate would have it, Skarmory just uses Roar again, and Tyranitar gets forced back in. I don't want this thing to get toxic, so I decided to switch Starmie in again. You know, I really need to clear Spikes. I'm continuing to add pressure against the Skarmory by Thunderbolting, but I'm soon going to realize that Skarmory is probably going to switch out, so I'll have to risk it and use Rapid Spin. Only 2 Pokemon were revealed, and if my spin gets blocked, things could go really badly for me, as if they already weren't. And good god, I got rewarded. If Celebi's coming in against Starmie, I can reasonably assume that there's no Gengar to block the Rapid Spin. I'll be honest, at this point in the game, I have no idea what type of team Jovel is running. Those 3 meta Pokemon can fit on almost anything. Anyways, Leech Seed is not cool, so I sent in Tyranitar to cut my losses. On turn 10, I switch in Skarmory to scout Celebi's set, and Giga Drain was revealed, so I'm assuming this is 3 attacks plus Leech Seed. And if Celebi runs Giga Drain specifically, it's going to have a weaker Grass Stab, and its hidden power is going to be either Fire or Ice, but usually Fire. Next turn, I finally took my opportunity to set up Spikes, and Celebi goes for Leech Seed. If Celebi went for Hidden Power there, that would have been some valuable chip damage. I anticipate the Hidden Power Fire from Celebi, so I brought in Tyranitar. And to be honest, I could have done this on turn 9, but I decided to blast the Celebi with Hidden Power Bug. And because I scouted the Celebi set earlier, I managed to sneak in a Spikes layer instead of just killing it straight up, while not adding to the passive damage on my opponent's side. Since Jovel's Skarmory did not reveal any attacking moves whatsoever, I have a free opportunity to use Focus Punch. This is risky as I allow Skarmory to set up more Spikes against me. I also misplayed by going Rock Slide here on the Protect, but switching up moves gives Jovel a harder time to switch into Tyranitar's attacks. I think I was afraid of like a Salamence switch in or something, but either way, Jovel sends in Swampert on my Focus Punch and I got a stupid critical hit. My team doesn't match up super well against Swampert, so if I didn't get that critical hit, I would need to find an opportunity to Toxic or Will-O-Wisp it. Jovel responds to the critical hit by sending in Salamence. In most cases, Blissey can be used as a blanket check to Salamence because of its surprisingly high physical bulk, but I failed to damage calc and consider that 2 Brick Breaks from mixed Salamence can knock out Blissey with Spikes and Sand Chip. At this point, both my Gengar and Starmie are equally valuable, so one of them dying to a critical hit from Salamence can be really devastating. whereas my Blissey isn't as much of a win condition as it could have been. Though if I was sure this was mixed Salamence, Skarmory could have actually came in and I could just pivot around the next Fire Blast. But I didn't think of that. It would also account for Dragon Dance Salamence. I wasn't sure what move Salamence was going to use here, but I lucked out because Salamence used Hidden Power Grass, trying to mid-ground against my Tyranitar while predicting a Water type switch in. You would think that I would threaten the Salamence with Ice Beam, right? But for some inexplicable reason, I decided to double switch into Starmie as Jovel sends out Tyranitar. I didn't know what the Tyranitar set was, so if I stayed in, Jovel could have taken advantage of that with like Focus Punch or Dragon Dance. Based on my reasoning earlier, I should have been fine taking a Brick Break if Salamence did stay in. On the next turn, I chose not to switch out, fearing Pursuit, and I just had to Hydro Pump to do as much damage as possible. Somewhat fortunately, Tyranitar's best move against me was Rock Slide. It didn't kill me, but it put me in a precarious situation. I'm now at 18.5% HP, which means that if I switch out and switch back in, I take Spikes and Sand Chip, which is 18.75%. What this means is that my Starmie has to Rapid Spin ASAP, or else I'll just die. Sure, I say that, but what actually happens is that I Thunderbolt the switch in. But I do get the spin up, it's just the next turn. I should be fine against this Jirachi no matter what set it's running. This Jirachi predicts a Swampert switch with Ice Punch instead of Thunderbolt, but since it revealed Ice Punch, it most likely does not have Hidden Power Grass, so Swampert can just sit on it. Jovel realizes this, so they send in Tyranitar to sack, and I use Hydro Pump as a mid-ground in case Jovel sends in a Flying type. If that missed, that matchup would have been a little awkward. Salamence comes back in again. I could have survived a Hidden Power Grass and threatened with Ice Beam, but I chose to switch in Blissey, making the same mistake as I did before. But I get rewarded as Jovel switches Jirachi back in. I was confident that I can keep Blissey in on this Jirachi and deal with whatever it has to throw at me. Jirachi goes for Substitute while I go for Seismic Toss, but this Jirachi has the bane of every Blissey's existence, 101 HP subs, meaning that I have to spend an extra turn breaking the Substitute. My only response is to go back to Swampert and risk extra chip damage on it. I can easily break its sub with Earthquake. Admittedly, I was at the mercy of Ice Punch freezes or critical hits. To take advantage of my defensive play, Salamence comes back in and dodges an Earthquake. At my range, 88%, I know that it can tank a Hidden Power Grass, but even then I chose to switch out again into Gengar this time. Jovel was still threatened by Ice Beam, so they had to send in Skarmory, who is just taunt fodder. After all this time, now I have the upper hand. Gengar can now Will-O-Wisp anything with impunity. Jovel chooses Jirachi to be this victim of infernal parades. That's not even the right move, but whatever. You know what I mean. Instead of Swampert, I have Tyranitar deal with the Jirachi because it's more expendable, and to my surprise this Jirachi has Thunder. Personally, I like running Thunder on Jirachi, but if you're running a Calm Mindset, you want Thunderbolt for the higher accuracy. I use Rock Slide as a mid-ground just in case Jovel sends in a Flying type, though even if I pressed Earthquake, not much difference would have been made here. Jovel sends in Skarmory, and I go back to Gengar, threatening Taunt. Now admittedly, this sequence of events was a little bit sloppy, and if I wasn't playing so conservatively, I could have won this game in fewer turns. I used Ice Punch several times against the Skarmory, predicting a Salamence switch, but the high risk part here was that Skarmory is able to reset Spikes, which is Jovel's only way to regain momentum, but this game is already over. Eventually, I did manage to get a Will-O-Wisp on the Skarmory, and Skarmory has only one option, and it's to flail around with Roar. While that Skarmory is using the move, I use Tyranitar and Swampert to chip it down until it dies. Salamence gets sent in, and I let Tyranitar die to it. I send in Gengar to finish it off. And what? It was faster than me? Well, good thing I couldn't die to a critical hit. So yeah, that was game 1. That game was a bit hard at first, but I was able to bring it back towards the end. Even though I was trying my hardest to play a little conservatively so that I don't make mistakes, some of the things I did while on autopilot just did not have low risks and high rewards. In an alternate universe, I could have lost 1 or 2 important Pokemon because of bad predictions, so I need to get better at assessing game states. Let's now transition over to the second game. Keep in mind, before this match started, I thought I was going to be facing a Superman stall team with gimmicks like Perish Song Misdreavus, though I didn't account for that in game 1, but I wasn't guaranteed to face a Spikes immune team. For this game, I ran a Zapdos plus Dugtrio set up with a healthy mix of physical and special attackers. I lead with Zapdos, and Jovel once again leads with Tyranitar. This is a great matchup for me, so I get the opportunity to Baton Pass and switch into either Tyranitar's Rock Slide or whatever Jovel wants to switch in. The Rock Slide crit totally mattered. Jovel switches into Celebi to take whatever my Swampert can throw at this Tyranitar, and like last game, I don't know what the Celebi set is. I thought using Protect to scout the Celebi's Leech Seed or Giga Drain was obvious here, because that was the case in Game 1. But I didn't account for Celebi taking advantage of Protect and using Swords Dance. Now I have to stay in and use Hydro Pump to mid-ground whatever Celebi wants to Baton Pass to. I should have taken this cue that Baton Passing to Swampert to check my own Swampert means that Jovel does not have a good Swampert switch in besides Celebi. So I should have preserved my defensive water type's HP at all costs. I should have switched in Zapdos or Celebi, but I was worried about Hidden Power Bug or Rock Slide for my Choice Band set. Instead, I chose to keep Swampert in and chipping away at the opposing Swampert, but eventually I come to my senses and switch in Zapdos on an Earthquake. My only play was to bluff Hidden Power Grass and Baton Pass as Swampert switched out. I switch in Swampert as Tyranitar comes in, but this poor dude is so beat up. And what's worse is that it prompts Celebi to come back in. You know, if this is a Swords Dance Celebi, I should have just switched in Dugtrio on the turn it Swords Danced. But I did the damage calcs, and it turns out that Hidden Power Bug did not kill max defense Celebi at this range all the time. The Celebi would have survived at 6% at worst case scenario. But I assumed the Celebi was max defense, and I think most Swords Dance Celebi do not max out their defensive bulk. So I should have just risked Dugtrio. After all, Celebi's not going to have a grass attack. I chip Celebi on the Swords Dance turn, and then I Hydro Pump whatever comes in via Baton Pass. Metagross makes sense on these Swords Dance Pass teams, as it can end the game on the spot with agility. But wait, Metagross goes for Reflect? Okay, my viewers, I know most of you ROM hack, but when have you seen a Metagross use Reflect? When? On the next turn, I use Protect to get more Leftovers recovery, and Metagross tries to catch a switch with Meteor Mash. And remember when I said that I should have preserved Swampert's HP at all costs? Yep, Metagross uses Explosion after I Protect, killing my win con. To handle Metagross, I should have just switched in Zapdos earlier. While I was playing this match, I thought Zapdos was going to be important for the endgame, but look at Jovel's revealed team. I don't actually need Zapdos. Now at this point, I lose so much momentum here. I no longer have a good Tyranitar switch in, and this Tyranitar Dragon Dances as I send in Celebi. I had to sacrifice nearly 2 of my Pokemon just to take it out, and my Tyranitar's critical hit Earthquake definitely mattered. Next turn, Celebi revenge kills my Tyranitar with Hidden Power. I thought it was Hidden Power Grass, but it made more sense for the Celebi set to have Hidden Power Fighting, specifically for Tyranitar. Dugtrio picks off Celebi with Hidden Power Bug, but that enables Jovel to send an Aerodactyl, which has Substitute. Jovel does not need to run a Choice Band because Aerodactyl would normally benefit from the Swords Dance Pass. As mentioned earlier, because my Swampert, my only Rock Resist, that's actually tanky, was already killed, Aerodactyl is free to throw hands at my team. And then Swampert comes in and finishes me off. Not even Hidden Power Grass over Ice could save me. Zapdos teams typically match up somewhat poorly against Swords Dance Pass teams, but as you saw throughout the game, I piloted my team horribly, and it gave Jovel so many opportunities to pick my team apart one by one. I should have taken the risk and tried to kill Celebi as soon as possible with Dugtrio, right after it revealed Swords Dance, and used Baton Pass for the first time. If I did that and kept my Swampert alive throughout the whole game, I could have actually had a chance to win. So here's the tiebreaker, a.k.a. Game 3. Once again, I'm running a TSS team, but this time it's centered around Fortress and it's more of a defensive team instead of an offensive team. For the third time, Jovel leads with Tyranitar, and I lead with Tyranitar for the second time. Jovel responds to the mirror by switching in Metagross, and for the second time, I switch in Swampert. But this time, this is actually my best pivot into Tyranitar because I don't have a Skarmory. This Swampert does not have Earthquake, so I couldn't really threaten Metagross, so I was forced to switch out into Fortress. Jovel decides to switch into Skarmory, expecting an Earthquake. Both of us trade Spikes, which is pretty normal, and instead of Rapid Spinning, I use Spikes again, anticipating a Gengar switch. Skarmory phases me out into Tyranitar, and while I could have attacked it with Fire Blast, I chose to switch in Fortress again. I'm now actually going to bank on the fact that Jovel does not have a Rapid Spinner, so I pull off the Rapid Spin on turn 6 and get phased again. My Tyranitar recovers back to full health. Skarmory only revealed 2 moves so far, and its third one could have been Toxic, so I decided to not risk Tyranitar and go back to Fortress. This Skarmory is staying in against my Fortress, and it's also continuing to set up spikes as I Rapid Spin them away. I was confused as to why Skarmory was staying in. I had more Rapid Spin PP than Skarmory does spikes. And Skarmory can only cripple Fortress with Drill Peck, which it hasn't been using, which probably means that Skarmory doesn't have it. Again, only 2 moves have been revealed so far, and I'm just wondering what they are. And if you cannot threaten Fortress with your Skarmory, you should probably switch out. To be fair, many teams assume that Skarmory is going to be the opponent's Spiker, and thus they don't exactly have a game plan for Fortress. While Fortress in Advanced is not an elite Pokemon, good teams should have ways to deal with it. For the next 16 turns, we're basically in a stalemate between Skarmory and Fortress. I just keep Fortress in against Skarmory, Rapid Spinning away any spikes, and using Hidden Power for other ways of PP depletion. This is not fun to watch, so I'm going to speed over it. It's only until Jovel reveals my Blissey that the stalemate ends and they finally switch into Celebi. Before this turn ended, I switched back into Fortress, but now I need to switch into Salamence to dodge a Hidden Power Fire. And I do just that. My Salamence is mixed so I can freely use Fire Blast, but Skarmory takes the fall instead. Perhaps Jovel thought my Salamence was a Dragon Dance sweeper or something. Now on the next turn, I make a misplay here, although it didn't make a big difference in the end, but I'll point it out anyway. Instead of pressuring Skarmory by Fire Blasting again twice, once through Protect, and assuming I get good luck, and then exploiting my good Salamence matchup against this team, I switch in Fortress, because that's what I thought you're supposed to do, right? It was a conservative play, not the most ideal. I'm still able to keep spikes off the field with my Fortress, and a few turns later, I decided to Thunderbolt the Skarmory with my Blissey. On paper, this paralysis was actually a bad thing as it allows Skarmory to PP stall better, but in practice, it actually made no significant difference to the game. Skarmory also revealed my Jirachi, so now they know my entire team. I go back to Fortress and do the same old song and dance until Jovel reveals their Starmie. Jovel did have a Rapid Spinner this whole time, but because of their hesitancy to actually bring it into my Fortress all this time, my intuition thinks that this is an offensive Starmie with 3 attacks plus Rapid Spin. Thus, it's kind of frail and it needs to get the Rapid Spin off at the right time before dying. My Fortress is not threatened by this Starmie, so I can use Hidden Power to 2-hit KO it, and Starmie gets the spin off and it misses Hydro Pump unfortunately. Though to be honest, even if Hydro Pump hit, it would not have 1-hit KO'd without a critical hit, and Skarmory would likely come back and set up spikes again, so I could gradually heal off the damage. All in all, I firmly believe that Jovel misplayed by sending in Starmie in the first place. That's like their only answer against my mixed Salamence, so they should have tried to find an opportunity to spin later and 1-hit KO my Salamence with Ice Beam. Though if I was Jovel, I probably shouldn't have switched out Starmie on turn 45. It was basically the case with my Starmie in game 1, where if I switched out without spinning, I would have just died upon switching, most likely. After Starmie faints, Jovel sends in Celebi, but immediately switches it out to Metagross as I switch in Swampert, which is a good double switch. If I instead switched to Salamence or Blissey on the Hidden Power Fire, Metagross could have been able to fire off a Meteor Mash. I use Protect to scout for whatever Metagross is going to do, and I fail because Celebi switches back in. And you guessed it, next turn I use Protect to scout the Celebi. What could possibly go wrong? Well, Celebi reveals Giga Drain, not providing more relevant information on what set it's running. Does it have Leech Seed? Does it have Calm Mind? Does it have Perish Song? Who knows? Another double switch occurs and I switch to Jirachi as Metagross comes in. I can't do anything with this Jirachi, so I'll send in Fortress afterwards. I was thinking that Metagross would want to go toe-to-toe with this Fortress by spamming Earthquake, so I wanted to reveal my 4th move, Counter, just to surprise it. That did not work out as Celebi came in and I basically wasted a turn instead of prioritizing spikes. It was a missed opportunity to get my spikes back, as in hindsight, Metagross probably shouldn't have stayed in against the Fortress unless it had the offbeat Hidden Power Fire. Also, I had Salamence for it, so there was no need risking Fortress's HP anyways. On turn 52, Celebi fires another Hidden Power Fire, no pun intended, and I absorb it with Salamence. Once again, I have a free turn to set off another Fire Blast, and I do just that, and Celebi goes down to 16%. Why did Celebi go for Giga Drain? That did nothing. Jovel could have sent in their Tyranitar on that turn, and it would be able to survive a Brick Break and threaten me with a physical move or Ice Beam. I'm not sure how effective that would have been, but it would at least minimize how much chip damage Jovel would take. But now Jovel decides to send in their Tyranitar as a Dragon Claw, and I did the damage calculations and Brick was guaranteed to knock it out at this range. Jovel figured that out and switched to Metagross. Now I need Fortress to absorb a Meteor Mash and Jovel gets the lucky attack boost. I thought this is another great opportunity to use Counter as Metagross has good odds to win the matchup. But the one time it missed Meteor Mash, that was not a good thing, as my Counter did nothing once again. Had I known that, and just in general, I should have just spiked to regain my advantage. Celebi comes back in and I finally set up spikes. By the way, Hidden Power Fire does not KO Fortress from full health, but I wanted to keep Fortress alive and healthy for Skarm and Metagross. As I try to dodge the Hidden Power Fire, Celebi finally reveals its third move, Recover. And in just 2 turns, Celebi's suddenly back to full health. That did suck, but I didn't really mind too much as I had no rush to win the game on the spot. Jovel then double switches into my Blissey with their Metagross, and I send in my designated check and I start using Counter. You'll start noticing that the chip damage against Fortress is adding up, and I did make a couple of bad plays, which resulted me in only getting 2 layers instead of 3 and trying to counter in vain. Eventually, Jovel reveals their final Pokemon, Aerodactyl, which can hit Blissey hard with any move. This raises another question. Whenever my Salamence was out using Fire Blast earlier, why didn't Jovel switch in Aerodactyl to resist it and threaten it out with Rock Slide? I have no idea which move Aerodactyl is going to use, so I sent in my best defensive Mon, Swampert, to take whatever it's got. I knew Aerodactyl was going to switch out, but I couldn't really do anything because this is a defensive set, so I had to use Toxic on the Celebi, which doesn't really do that much. Next turn, I used Protect, which seems kind of foolish, but I kind of wanted to stall more Giga Drain PP, but I should have expected the Recover. Next up is another double switch. Jovel sends in Skarmory, and I send in Jirachi. I could have probably 2-hit KO'd with Fire Punch, but I chose to play the long game with Fortress instead. I take the opportunity to get my 3rd layer of spikes back. I'm not concerned about Skarmory regaining health because it can't do anything to Fortress in the endgame anyway, and I don't really have plans to knock it out at low health with my other Mons. And hold up! That Celebi just went for Giga Drain on my Fortress as I switched to Blissey. That was a strong play had Jovel managed to catch my Swampert. Good thing I switched up my pivots. Anyways, I tried to predict an Aerodactyl or a Metagross switch by using Thunderbolt, and Celebi revealed their 4th move, Calm Mind. Luckily, my Blissey also has Calm Mind, so I can get it into a winning Calm Mind war. Celebi wastes a Giga Drain PP while I go for Calm Mind, but then Jovel caught me off guard by switching in Metagross on an Ice Beam. As usual, Metagross forces Blissey out, and I send in Jirachi instead of Fortress this time. And goodness gracious, Jovel gets a lucky turn, as their Meteor Mash crits and gets an attack boost. I chose to send in Jirachi because my Fortress was at 62.7%, and I thought I was going to die and lose my answer to Skarmory if things really did not go my way. Also, Jirachi can't really do much to this team, as its only offenses are Fire Punch and Toxic. I don't get the Fire Punch burn, but I live Earthquake, that's pretty good. We can skip this next turn. Jovel chooses to preserve their Metagross as death fodder and brings in Tyranitar. Ouchie, that's an unlucky burn. I think Jovel's best play was sacrificing their Metagross and then threatening out my Jirachi with Aerodactyl. Now on this turn, I use Protect to Scout and what? Tyranitar has Toxic? I guess Jovel's last ditch effort was to Toxic the Swampert. Speaking of which, it tanks an Earthquake, all the while Tyranitar is slowly dying. I'm still using Protect as I want to be cautious and Tyranitar Toxics again. Now I can pivot against this Tyranitar for as long as I need to, and Tyranitar reveals its 4th move, Taunt? It's a creative set, but unfortunately for Jovel, it does not match well up against this team. Celebi says hi to my Swamp, the Swampert once again, and I just have Blissey to absorb the Giga Drain. I wanted to go for Calm Mind, but Jovel sacks their Metagross, and pressures me out with Aerodactyl again. What move is this thing going for? I don't know. My Tyranitar is more or less expendable at this point, so I switch it into Aerodactyl. In hindsight, it should have taken 1 Rock Slide instead of 2, but I get some nice chip damage. Once again, Swampert Toxics the Celebi switch in. Celebi recovers, but then again, it doesn't really matter, does it? I use this opportunity to get my Blissey to full health as Skarmory comes in. I opted to stay in with Thunderbolt because maybe, I don't know, Skarmory might reveal their 4th move, Toxic, I'm not sure. It gets 1 layer of spikes, which is a little bit scary. Either way, I send in Fortress, and Jovel makes another well-timed double switch back into Celebi. forcing me to send in my Salamence this time, regaining momentum with Recover. On turn 99, I use Roar, which isn't that good of a play. Fire Blast or Dragon Claw would have been better, but the extra Spikes chip on the Celebi is pretty nice. Regardless of whatever my reasoning is, I choose to Fire Blast on the next turn, and I get a critical hit, which seems like this game is incredibly cursed for Jovel or something. Celebi could have just Recover stalled, and PP stalled my Fire Blast. What can I say, I just got too lucky in this set. Though it makes up for all the bad bits of RNG I got in the first week, which I wish I could show you, but I can't. Afterwards, I send in Fortress, and I force Skarmory to bide its time with Protect, Spikes, etc. Not etc, it just uses 2 moves. Yes, Skarmory could have gotten to full health, but once again, the game kind of was already over at this point, and I could have just one-shotted it with my Blissey anyways. You're joking, right? You're joking, right? I get another critical hit? Now I'm just unintentionally rubbing my win in Jovel's face. Good god. I also dodge a Rock Slide flinch from the Aerodactyl, and it also goes down with Thunderbolt. And that's just how the set ended. I believe I just had the perfect matchup against Jovel's team in this game in particular. My defensive Swampert was able to handle the 2 rock types, Skarmory couldn't touch Fortress, both my Blissey and Salamence were good answers to Celebi, especially when its strongest move was Giga Drain, and my Fortress was able to handle both Metagross and Starmie. Not perfectly, but I played around them as best as I could. Granted, both of us each made a handful of mistakes, but my luck in this set was just exceptionally brutal. But in team tournaments and sometimes in the ladder, we take those. Overall, I liked this set, and I felt a bit more calm, cool, and collected during the battle, and I am very appreciative of my supportive teammates. Go Reggie Runners! Our team ended up winning the entire week, 7-2, against the Jubilant Jolteons, and you'll have to wait and see how we do in week 4. I hope you enjoyed watching this video, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and happy holidays!